Saturn in Aquarius. We got a little bit of a preview of Saturn moving into Aquarius in the spring as we were heading into the spring of 2020. And then, of course, Saturn retrograded out, moved back into the sign of Capricorn, wrapped things up there, and then moved back in December of 2020 into the energy of Aquarius, and is going to be here until we get to March of 2023. Now, I remember even back then, like years ago, actually, you can find clips of me on my YouTube channel where I was saying Saturn is going to move into Aquarius in March. And at the very end of March and very beginning of April of 2020, Saturn was going to conjunct Mars and did conjunct Mars at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And I felt like this gives us insight into an understanding of what could possibly be the direction in which we are going as we move towards and as we are about to delve into Pluto in Aquarius. So this was a little bit of a preview, and what was the most notable thing, I mean, the most undeniable thing that happened at that time, the world shut down, right? This word social distancing, social restriction, that started to become the dominant way in which we started to operate. And many of us felt compelled to go in that direction for a variety of reasons, whether it was social pressure, whether it was care or love for each other, whether it was our own experiences that raised our compassion, seeing what was happening to our friends and family, or whether it was just another excuse to spend time on our own, as it was for me. My life didn't change all that much. The outside world changed a lot, but so for me, not as much as someone who lives online in many ways. But that really was the dominant energy. Just overnight, it felt like the world shut down. And of course, what we also saw was this awakening of a duality. It was always there, just like all the signs represent essential parts of the human experience. They're always all playing out. We have all the signs within us. We are the universe. It's not just that we're connected to the universe. We are the universe itself, which means we are going to have experiences that represent the archetype of all the signs and of all the planets. I would even say perhaps all, if not most, of the asteroids as well. But Aquarius is an energy with a very strong duality, and this is what was heightened very quickly. If you think about these energies of Mars and Saturn, to the ancient astrologers, these were what were conceptualized as malefics, the two main malefics. And Venus and Jupiter are conceptualized as the benefics. Now, depending on your approach, right, because I know that we have a variety of approaches to astrology. We are a very big umbrella. Everyone, whatever your approach is to astrology, whatever brought you to astrology, whatever your intention is, what you do with this practice, you are welcome under this very, very broad umbrella. Those of us who might be more modern or more psychological astrologers might not necessarily like to use that type of terminology like malefic and benefic, but it is valuable to consider because we are sometimes judgmental of energies. We put a value quality on them, but also how we experience them, we might label as positive, we might label as negative. And so, yeah, sometimes Saturn can be a tough one, right? Sometimes Mars as well. Oh boy. Try having a Mars square or a difficult Mars conjunction or opposition, and you know that this isn't always the easiest energy to integrate. It may be valuable, it may be a core part of the human experience, but the actual integration of this very powerful energy or these very powerful energies can be tricky at times. And it was like in an instant, we were asked and we were made to become aware of this very strong duality in a very concentrated way. And so Aquarius as a sign is, on the one hand, about the collective, yes, but it's also highly individualistic. As much as it is thinking about and working in cooperation with others, it is also going your own way. as much as it is about being connected through the web, through technologies, it's also living off the grid. And we can see this in the glyph of Aquarius as well, with the two waves that don't actually touch when you look at them. That is the strong duality that's indicated here. And when Saturn and Mars conjuncted, in an instant, all of us had to be immersed in this duality in one way or another. Now, Aquarius is also an energy that is thought to connect with truth, right? Rational truth, for example. There are subjective truths that are, that's Sagittarius, right? The truths that are personal to you, your spiritual truths, your philosophical truths that guide your life. That is Sagittarian energy. However, there is also empirical truth. And what empirical truth is, well, even that sometimes can feel like just when it is distilled, just when it is agreed, there are going to be other voices as well. And so we saw all of this happening in a very immersed way as we move to this conjunction of Mars and of Saturn. And to me, this gave us a little bit of a glimpse into where we were heading. We saw people, because they had to be still, on the one hand, they had to be isolated, they had to be alone, became aware of all of the things that were in them. It became quite undeniable. The truth of your life, the truth of how you feel about your life came right to the surface. Chris Rock was in an interview, I believe it was with Jimmy Fallon. He's one of my favorite comics. And he made a joke, and I believe it was that interview, where he said that everybody around me with the pandemic, with going into isolation, everybody's breaking up. Everybody's getting divorced, right? The way that he says it, the very comical way that he says it. And I thought that was a really interesting observation that did happen to some of us, right? The truth of the situations and the people that we had formally distracted ourselves from at key moments, we no longer could. And so we were right there and we had to face our own discontent. And of course, that discontent could show up in terms of our relationships, our living situations, our jobs, certainly. We were asked to take this respite. We were asked to take this moment. And at the time, I remember calling it the great pause. But I've recently come to understand this as the great immersion. It was like in an instant, we were immersed in the reality of our lives. And yes, for some people, that meant being aware of their pain and their sadness and their discontent. But for others, it was different. Being immersed in what was true for them meant love, for example. Lots of people who just started dating shacked up. Lots of people. It was a phenomenon. I personally know lots of people who just were getting to know somebody and got married. Like that is a phenomenon that was taking place as well. And I know quite a few people. I could count them on one hand, yes, but to me, that's quite a few. 9 months after the start of isolation, they were having babies, right? And that was true for them. And so whatever your truth is, however you experience your truth, it is as if we could no longer be distracted from it. We had to fully be present and admit it to ourselves how we really felt. And it was this moment to take a little bit of a step back, but as part of the duality of Aquarius, we were also fully jumping in, fully immersed. Now, the other part of our discontent, of course, with that isolation, I think a lot of people started to become aware of the where it is that they have felt or they had felt that they deserved better. And that could be structurally, that could be on a level of society, but that can also be on a more personal level as well in our relationships. And I think that's connected to the part of Aquarian energy that's associated with equality. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when I talk about Uranus, because Uranus really is this harbinger of, when we look at historically, it represents this shift in understanding that ultimately helps us to understand why Uranus is associated with human rights and equal rights. But where it is that people felt they didn't have that, that came right to the surface as well, along with the discontent and along with the pain of that, along with the desire. And the desire to move through the pain ultimately was to move in a direction that allowed greater independence, freedom, really.